All right, folks, we've now reached the final session for today, and it is a panel discussion with our resident mentors at Growth Gen on the topic of making the bottom line work, a great way to tie into our theme of the summit and leave you all with the ultimate takeaways for today. Now, as with our previous Q&As, this is, of course, an interactive session as always, and we encourage you to jump onto the Q&A section in the chat box and type in your questions, or just simply click to raise your hands and to ask our panelists. And if we have time, I'll be able to ask it to them directly. So just to briefly discuss who we're going to have on the panel today, our first panelist is Shane McNulty. Now, Shane is an experienced CEO, executive coach, management consultant, facilitator, and trainer with both local and international operating experience. He created 3 successful startups as well as managed public listed companies. He has demonstrated ability in developing strategy and delivering improved sales and financial results. Welcome, Shane. Our second panelist is Krys Franchica. Now, Krys has a successful history in business startups. With a strong business acumen, her strength is in systems and procedures and the establishment of strong teams in order to ensure businesses work strong without her, and more importantly, make a profit. She's a business owner that runs multiple businesses, including ABS, the Alphabet Academy, and so much more. Welcome to the panel, Krys. And our third and final panelist is Marjorie Curry. As a business coach and leadership, hi everybody. As a business coach and leadership trainer, Marjorie has 15 years experience analyzing businesses and managing change. Over the last 6 years, she's been helping small business owners across a range of services and industries change their livelihoods by giving them more than advice on how to grow and structure their business. She provides the tools and techniques to raise their standards, grow as individuals, and build strong teams with shared values, solid communication procedures, and united goals. Welcome, Marjorie and the team. Hi.
Hello, great to be here.
Fantastic. Well, let's get started. Shane, I'm going to go to you first. We've got a question for you. What is the economic environment going to be like in 2023? One of those key questions I asked at the very beginning of the summit.
Well, hopefully by the end of the summer, I can give you some some good news. But I think you all live on a high. But I think we should probably all expect that it'll be a tougher year next year. And I think particularly really around sales growth and customer acquisition. I think we're going to find in 2023, both small business owners, our main consumers do tend to now start to pull back a bit. I think they're going to be more focused on their spending. I think the last 2 years of very strong, sales growth a lot of small businesses have had because interest rates were low, very low. Consumers are at home has passed, and consumers are going to be far more interested in really getting value for money and finding customers and retaining them and getting them into your funnel. I think will be a lot more work than probably a lot of small business owners have had to do in the last couple of years. So I think it'll be a lot more of going maybe back to the basics that we were all doing in 2018 and 2019. And sort of, parking the last 2 years has been good years. But now with interest rates, they'll go up again, probably in February. There's probably another rate rise after that. Onar can probably tell me what he thinks, but I'd suggest there's at least 2 more rate rises to come. And, as we all know, a lot of people are coming off their fixed rate loans in March, and that's when it'll really hit. So, sales growth, I think, will be slower and customer acquisition will be harder. I think you'll have to work harder at it and probably think of different strategies to potentially what you've done in the last 2 years.
Well, you know what, I appreciate it. I think it's easier to rip off the Band-Aid and just accept that that's the reality. So it's a good reality check, Shane. I appreciate it. So you mentioned strategies, and I want to go to Krys for this one. Krys, what are some practical strategies that you're implementing to perhaps share in 2023 to improve our bottom line?
Hi, everyone. I think that just knowing your numbers is really, really important, and knowing where your profit sits. So that's something that everyone should just really, really focus down on.
So just getting those graphs out like Miles talked about at the beginning, just running those monthly reports and keeping sort of your head in those data lines and figuring out where the best places to readdress them. Is that basically your best strategy?
Yeah, the best strategy from a startup point of view is actually understanding and knowing what you're looking at. So if you are a startup and you don't know the difference between profit, turnover, if you don't know the difference between asset, liability, it's being okay to ask those questions and to really get that knowledge in that area so you understand the key questions to ask.
Fair enough. That's definitely just getting back to basics, and Shane said the same thing as well. So that I'm glad you're both aligned on that. It's a clear through thread so far. Marjorie, to you now. What are some examples of personal financial goals for small business owners like myself in 2023?
Yeah, okay. This is a really important question because I think many of us have our goals around the business. So we might have our revenue goals, might have how much profit we want to make. Even if we haven't necessarily revisited them or thought much about them after we've set them. I think around this time is when many people go out and set their goals for 2023, if not already. So it's really important, and I'm going to echo Cheryl's questions that she raised in her segment around what is your ideal future for you personally? What does that look and feel like? And so it's thinking around things like having time off, for the things that matter most to you. Maybe it's relationships, well-being, hobbies. This is one of the most common reasons why we get into business, isn't it, for ourselves, because we want that flexibility. So another thing would be, do you have any goals around how much money you want to have put aside for the things that make life easier? So for the things that make life sweeter even. So maybe it's that business class trip where you can sleep so that you can attend one of your events, like, for example, Eob and I are going to a accounting expo. Not that I expect that we'll be going business class, Eob, but for these sorts of business events, maybe being able to go business class for a long haul would be one of your goals. Maybe it's being able to celebrate a milestone at a really nice restaurant. Maybe it is being able to have a cleaner, for example, so that you can focus on your business. So what are those things that do make life easier and sweeter for you? And another thing to really consider, which has been brought up many times in the summer, is around your personal development and upskilling. So have a goal around that. It's important that we are green and growing versus ripe and rotting. This is from the McDonald's founder, Ray Kroc. I'm sure many of you have heard of that before. And a really key one that I do want to finish up on is your retirement. So there's been studies, particularly by the Association of Super Funds of Australia, I think it is, and they talk about how the people that are self-employed often have lower super balances than their employees. So how are we as business owners making sure that we are putting toward, maybe it's the 10%, what is our commitment to making sure that we set ourselves up? And again, there's calculators for that so that from the time that you have now through to when you intend to retire, what sort of lifestyle do you want to live in retirement? So all of those sorts of personal goals is important to consider.
Yeah, definitely one on the thinking of the future in that long term. I mean, I definitely echo that last point you made about super. I look at that balance and go, oh, it's a cute little, tiny little balance. I'm hopefully not thinking about retirement anytime soon, but yeah, definitely you're not wrong. Like it should gnaw at the back of your head. But there's an interesting statistic about it being lower than the people you employ as well. Some great strategies there. Thank you for sharing. So Shane, I'm going to ask you this first, and then Krys, you can sort of color it at the end as well with your own thoughts. So we just heard some really great practical strategies about how to obtain and to chase personal financial goals. Let's think a little bit more outside the box now. Like, what are some creative, innovative, more lateral thinking strategies that people can use to improve your bottom line? Shane, starting with you.
Well, there's no pressure there. I would probably say, think about some of what we might term creative is, I would say a lot of it's just going back to basics within your own business too. Be really clear on the accountability in your business. Who is doing what? When times get tougher, poor accountability, maybe driven by poor process, which has sort of got lost when times are good, becomes critical, so that you are allocating those resources to where you're going to get the maximum result. If you're doing activities, be it Google AdWords, be it any marketing or promotional work or BD work that really isn't giving you a return and maybe hasn't for the last 6 months, when times get tough, the creative thing is to park that. I'm not saying don't ever go back to it, but focus on where you're going to get income in that will translate to profit and cash flow. Cash flow is king in small businesses when times get tough. The other thing I'd say is also, if you employ staff, be really transparent on how your business is going. Communicate what it is you need to do and you need to change. People have got, in some small businesses, you may only have 2 or 3 employees, probably quite, comfortable, in the last couple of years, because business has been relatively easy. Not always, it's never easy, but it's been around. Be transparent now. Say, look, this is how we're going to have to change. This is our focus. Give them your sales budgets. You don't have to give them the numbers, but say, each month, give them 100%. And then as the month goes past, tell them how you're tracking towards that 100%. Be really clear on what it is you're trying to do, because sometimes they will see a change in your behavior. You may become more stressed, more focused, and sort of not quite understand, gee, why has that person changed? To be really clear with them on what they need to do and hold them accountable to that too.
Absolutely. I love that. No, it's fantastic. It is such an innovative, it shouldn't be innovative. It should be seen as creative, right? To be transparent, right? To communicate, but you're not wrong. It is definitely one of those things that gets lost along the way, whether it's for, most of the time, non-malicious reasons, but sometimes for malicious reasons. And so it is good that, if you can be honest with yourself, that's the one step. With lots of strategies we'll learn today about that. And then the next step is to be honest with the people you're accountable to. That's a really key thing you just mentioned. Krys, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Shane. You need to, if you do have the privilege of having a team around you, employees, you need to give them all the information that they need in order to make sure that they're meeting target and meeting whatever your Northern Star is. What will happen is, if you withhold that information, you will not be going in the same direction, and it'll be hard to achieve. Another thing that I just sort of would like to add in relation to making sure that all of your team are on board is, when you're talking about that accountability, really know your job descriptions if it's a smaller team, and what you expect. So that clarity around your expectations of your team needs to be clear. It's just one of those things that if everyone's on the same page, if everyone's got the same heartbeat, everyone's moving towards the same goal, you will have a better chance of making sure that profit is on that bottom line.
That's a really cool thing. And you sort of spark up some memories of, because I've worked for big corporations, one of the largest cruise lines in the world, head office to, working for a small mum and pop restaurant kind of thing. And regardless of whatever spectrum you're working at, it's really sort of interesting to reflect back, even anecdotally, and imagine that I was in environments where, and I'm sure many people out there would feel the same way, or they've been in environments where, if it was a small business, a very small business, mum and pop, perhaps everyone is doing everything. And at some point those job descriptions are blurred, but then you get to your big corporations and all of a sudden, if the expectation from your manager hasn't been quite laid out, but you're getting in trouble for things, or you're not meeting targets that are somehow mystically put out somewhere, and there's an expectation, and the only time you get to be told about it is your end of year review, then that's also that lack of transparency as well, and that can really sort of disenfranchise people. So that's really, really cool point. I love that. Yeah. Marjorie, got a question for you. What questions?
100%. The only other thing, sorry.
So please.
Sorry, Nathan. The only other thing that I'd want to add, and this is sort of outside the box, is we hear this sort of this saying about learning how to fail quickly. So know when to get out. If something is not working, you need to have the people in place to give you the honest, objective information to say, this is not working, this is affecting our bottom line, and know whether it's something that you need to just bow out of and change strategy. So learning how to fail is something that you just need that team around you as well, whether it's employees or whether it's advisors, to say, everyone,
encourage to
now it's time to bow out and pivot.
Yeah, that's a really cool point too. I think it's something that you don't want to use the word, the so-called the F word, fail. You don't want to use that in your business, but yet it's actually okay. And I'd like that to normalize that, to be okay to pivot, I think is a key moment, is really critical. So thank you for sharing that as well. Marjorie, what questions should we as business owners be asking ourselves regularly to make better decisions and improve our financial position?
Okay, so the first one would be, who is your most valuable and most costly customer?
Mhm.
So some customers may be providing you a lot of revenue than others, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're more profitable. So high revenue customers can be expensive if, there's high cost associated with serving them. Maybe they're eating up your resources by, requiring constant attention. So it's really important that just because a customer adds to your top line, that doesn't mean necessarily that they're helping your bottom line. So I think that's really important. I think really ties in really well to this particular theme. So really review your profit per customer. So you would see that on your reports that Miles spoke about earlier. And ask your employees as well, to help you evaluate which customers require a lot of attention and a lot of hand holding, and how can you turn that around as much as possible. The second question, which really summarizes a lot of the goals, I'll say, that we've heard a lot about today, is what is your pricing strategy? And why is it the case? So pricing can determine your product's value in the consumer's eyes, and it can drive or hinder your profitability. So what is your strategy around that? When is the last time that you've considered adjusting your prices? It can be tempting to keep the same price, especially, things are going well, you're getting a lot of yeses. Actually, I think we spoke about this, Nathan, didn't we, in the board?
We did, yeah.
So it's really top of mind and relevant to many business owners. So it's important to analyze your profit and loss statement, factor in how the costs of materials and labor, how that's changing over time, interest rates, all of those things, inflation, all of those things are need to be considered. And also research how your competitors are adjusting their pricing as well. And then finally, it is really about, what is your why and what problem do you solve? So Andrew and Victoria spoke about this, how, Select Pay look at what are the problems, what are the biggest challenges that SMEs are facing, and it's around staffing and cash flow, and their solution addresses those things. So ensure that, just as you grow, that your business as well is evolving and relevant to your market.
I love it. I hope you guys are taking notes with that one, because Marjorie, you brought up some incredibly good points there. So I think it's particularly sort of drawing back to that key point that a lot of people are really worried about for next year, and perhaps we would dare say now, which is those cash flows and staffing. And sort of, we've had a lot of great discussions today from other speakers who have mentioned about exactly how you can solve that. So definitely, sort of like, as you said, making those decisions can ahead of time can really put you in a better financial position. So I've got one final question. We've reached our last question of our last summit of the year. Would you believe it? I'm going to start, Shane, you get the honor of being first, then we'll go to Krys, and then Marjorie, you get to close. So the question is this: how can leaders help employees connect their activities with improving their bottom line? Shane, over to you.
I'm just going to re-emphasize what Krys said, which is be really clear on what people's accountabilities are, make sure they understand the process to achieve them, and be really clear on what you're measuring them on, so that you don't get that, I know small businesses, it may not happen, but that, end of year, a review which just says you've missed every objective we thought we had. You need to communicate, keep communicating, and over communicate when the business is in transitional, things are potentially slowing down. So clear accountability, clear measurement, clear process, and make sure, not just from your point of view, probably that's seems self-evident to a business owner, make sure you're checking in with your employees that they understand what their accountabilities are, they understand the measurement, they understand how you're going to review them, so they understand it as well as you do, because that's often where you'll get that misalignment. You think it's blindingly clear, but for them it's actually not that clear.
Yeah, very good point there. It's easy to not get past the rose-colored glasses sometimes. Yeah. Krys, what about you?
Look, just to echo that, if you have the luxury of having a team with you, is making sure that their KPIs are actually in line with your business objectives. So making sure that everyone, and I've said this before, everyone's got the same heartbeat, everyone's moving forward in the same direction. So making sure that their KPIs reflect your business objectives, which should in turn impact your bottom line.
Alignment. I love it. And Marjorie, you have the final word.
So I will, again, I support what Krys was talking about around financial literacy. So, do your employees have awareness around, the meaning of various things, like what is revenue, what is profit, what drives those things. So if they can understand how money works for themselves and how to handle it well and responsibly, then they're going to be able to apply that to your business as well. A second point would be there's so much data around organizations with higher level of engagement, employee engagement, have better financial performance. So what are you doing around your engagement factor? Engaged workforces will exhibit better well-being, and they're going to be treating your customers a lot. They're going to have, within their in how they engage with your customers, that's going to mean that there's happier customers, which we know happier customers results in more commercial success. And then finally as well, consider at some point, even if we don't consider ourselves as salespeople, we're going to have to at some point sell something. So whether it's your idea that you need to sell, whether it's your team, whether it's yourself, so consider giving each person in your team the tools and skills to have the sales skills that they need, especially if they're not used to pitching, they're not comfortable to pitch. What do they need to focus on first? What is the 30-second commercial for your business so that when they do meet people, they know how to introduce prospects to your business and who you are and how your business helps your prospects.
Absolutely. I love that final point about sort of knowing that worth, knowing that elevator pitch. I think a fun activity I've seen before on a video is where the boss walked around and obviously had a good rapport. There's a great engagement in the company, and he would just sort of throw a fun, like a smiley face ball at somebody gently. They'd catch it and he'd be like, right, give me your 30 seconds, go. And it was a great exercise as you walk it around because, it wasn't putting people on the spot in a mean way. It was a great way. You upset he just asked Donna that question. I love it. What do you do here? But it's a great thing. It was so fun to watch because you could tell the people it was like a fun startup, and just being able to, you could tell that people were so engaged, and it was practice, and it wasn't probably the first time they'd done it. It was a very polished TikTok video, but it was obviously they'd taken a while to get to that point, but on point. Every single person, as they walked around the room, was able to give that 30 seconds pitch. So I think, and at the end, he was throwing the ball and he had to say it as well. So the boss definitely wasn't out of the picture either. So there you go. Everybody on the call, I welcome you all to thank our fantastic panelists here today, Marjorie, Krys, and Shane. Thanks so much for joining us here today.